Hello, everybody, and happy Friday, and thanks for tuning in to RadioFreeRhinecliff.org, and this show in particular. Correct me if I'm Norm. I'm your host, Norm, and I'm thrilled to be here with Mr. Chris Wells. Chris, thank you so much for coming in.
I'm thrilled to be here, Norm.
I'm going to start with the business right away.
Yeah.
You're here because you got a fabulous show that's going to happen, presumably. I'm guessing. I've seen other shows. I'm sure it's going to be fabulous. Tomorrow at 4 p.m. at the Morton Memorial Library and Community House. Is that
That's
correct?
right. I've been asked by Radio Free Rhinecliff to create a podcast of my stories.
Oh.
So we're going to record 3 of my stories tomorrow at the library, 4 p.m. There'll be a special musical guest, Tim Gainey, on keys, and his pal Jake, I think it's Goralnik. Yeah, on guitar.
Another tennis buddy.
Yeah, they're great. So they're going to bring a kind of summery surf vibe to the sound. All this, the 3 stories all about summer. So that's what we're doing tomorrow.
Sweet. And how long will the program last?
Probably around an hour 15.
And do you have experience as a storyteller?
I do. Oh. I come to writing and storytelling through the theater. I've been an actor most of my life since I was a boy. I started doing theater in the dreadful small town where I grew up. Fine tradition of that.
Oh, you need to name it now.
Well, Lancaster, California.
Oh.
In the Mojave Desert. Dreadful, you know. I won't qualify. But yeah, I grew up in this desert town, and I started doing theater when I was 15 years old, and through a very circuitous track. When I was 30, I started writing performance work for myself, and then I realized the power of writing. Instead of just saying other people's words, you could say your words.
Say your own words.
Yeah.
So when you started doing theater as a young guy in this place in the Mojave Desert, what did you like about that?
Oh, that's a great question, Norm.
Stop it. You're here. You don't have to butter me up.
No, I'm serious, because I think about this a lot. It's something that's deeply meaningful to me. I think I like what I know is that when I started doing theater, I loved the structure. Theater also is a surrogate family. You have an immediate family. You have all these...
For a finite period of time.
Yes. And theater people, traditionally, are sort of have an ability to be quickly intimate. So you have a kind of bond that happens quickly and deeply because you're doing this kind of heightened shared thing. So I felt comfortable in that environment. I felt easily accepted, and the craft itself is very rule based.
Oh,
like as an actor, you have some words, you have some blocking, you have a costume to wear, you have a time to be there. You know there's going to be a show at 8 p.m. You know when it's going to be over. You know you're going to come back the next night, do the same thing. And, you know, not to sound like, you know, not to psychologize, but I didn't have a whole lot of structure in growing up. So I think I was very attracted to I nailed it. I was like, yes, I can do this.
So good.
Yeah.
And you didn't have structure because the household was just kind of loose?
Yeah, there was just, it wasn't, there weren't a lot of clear boundaries or clear ideas about this is what we do and this is what we do and this is what we do.
Kids really like that stuff.
Oh my God. People like that stuff.
Makes them feel so safe.
Yeah. And it makes for people who carry that safety with them into life.
And so you found that in the theater and in the camaraderie.
I did. And then, I was too young to know this when I began. But of course, now my life has been so informed by this. I see it looking back. I loved the magic of it. It was magical and transformational and a ritual of transformation that, worked every night, both in the production, but also over the course of it. Like, it really changed me.
Wow. And did you have siblings?
Yep. I'm the youngest of 3 boys.
And did they seek this structure outside of the family that they weren't getting in the house?
No.
Or any of them still in Lancaster, the Mojave
No,
Desert?
my mother still lives there in the house where I grew up. But my surviving brother lives in Texas, and my eldest brother died 7 years ago.
Okay. Sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
Huh. And mom, how's the relationship with mom? Do you get along with her well now?
I do.
And
yeah.
I'm guessing you probably get along well with her then.
Yeah,
But it
my
was just
mom's
not-
an extraordinary woman. She's, like everybody, complicated, but we have found a really, I was very, very close to her when I was a boy. I was, the youngest. I was gay. I was sensitive, and I loved my mom, and we went for country drives and talked about magazines and houses, and
It's so sweet.
it was so
what kind
sweet.
Of what kind of car?
My mom, well, the best was she drove a kind of olive green Buick that had a sort of a brown vinyl top. Do you remember when cars had those half Landau
Yeah,
roof?
yeah.
The Landau roof. Yeah, this Buick.
I had one, a 69 Thunderbird.
Come on.
Yeah.
This Buick was the car. Whenever I think of that car, I think if there was one time my mother was driving my brothers and I on the freeway. We had to go down to Los Angeles. I grew up in the Mojave Desert, so we were about an hour and 20 minutes outside of LA. My mother was having such a fit of I cannot control these three boys in my car that she started screaming and then floored it. And we had all been just like real a-hole kids, We're like, rah, rah, rah. Someone's in front. And she's like, stop! Like hits the gas. I will never forget it. We were all like, ah! It worked.
That's amazing. It's downright Machiavellian.
I mean,
like these dudes are gonna be
Yeah.
afraid of me.
yeah.
Damn it.
I mean,
That'll get 'em
she
in line.
topped it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Anyway, that was the Buick.
So you said growing up there that you were gay. When did you realize that?
Oh, well, I realized that when I was 12, about to turn 13, and my father, who was a pilot for Lockheed, he worked all over the world, and he would go and train flight crews around the world who had bought planes from Lockheed. That was his job. So he would sit down in a different country for 3 to 6 months. So he became friends with this man named Oscar Hegetschweiler, who was
Oscar
Swiss,
Hegetschweiler.
but lived in Germany, had a German wife, flew for a German airline called LTU. And he and Oscar had this idea that, they became friends and started talking. Oh, we both have sons about the same age. Your son should come to Germany for the summer. And the plan was down the line, my son will come to California for the summer.
Right.
You can see where this is going. So I had a summer where I was 12 and I went to Germany by myself and I stayed with this family. Oscar was gone all summer. So it was Hannelore Hegetschweiler, Oscar's wife,
Yeah.
who's
Mrs. Oscar.
in my imagination, she's like a German Susan Hayward. She was incredible and mostly intoxicated the whole time I was there. And their son, Uli.
Uli.
And they owned a villa in the Canary Islands. And which is very, Germans love to go south. They love Spain and Portugal. So it was the summer. So we were in outside of Dusseldorf for like 3-4 days. And then the three of us fly to this villa. And then Uli and I have a full on what was it called?
Torrid.
What was the Blue Lagoon?
Oh,
We had our
geez.
own full Blue Lagoon
I was
with.
thinking of Call Me by Your Name with.
Oh no, it wasn't nearly that. I mean, that's pretty artful and highfalutin. This was
Right.
This wasn't tawdry, but yeah, it
you're-
was a little more Blue Lagoon. Like the kids kind of left alone. Hannelore out at some other German house, having cocktails.
Drinking her Gewürztraminer.
Yeah, exactly. And Uli and I fooling around in the tide pools of the Canary Islands.
Have you written about that?
I have, yeah.
And your writing, is it often memoir or fiction or
Well, the things I call stories are all first person, yes, drawn from life. They're all about my life and adventures.
And so you embellish when you want, I'm guessing, for dramatic effect, or do you try to stay pretty close to the facts?
It's interesting. Embellish. That's such a... I'm like, do I embellish? Is that word pejorative?
Well,
I would
it
say
depends. If you're submitting it to like nonfiction journals, then it's an pejorative.
yeah, if it's
if
like
you're me,
the New England Journal
that's
of Medicine.
It's a super compliment. Yeah.
It's funny because, as I said, I just came from Omega an hour ago. I just led a storytelling workshop for a week. And a lot of what sometimes people bring in like, oh, but I don't remember how it went. And I'm like, oh, my God, here we go. Make it up.
Yeah.
Make it up.
Right.
Right? It's called creative nonfiction for a reason. Now, you're not making up that like The Staircase. I don't know if you just watched The Staircase. You're not going to make up that you won a Purple Heart in Vietnam. Like, don't make that up.
I might,
Well, you might.
Yeah.
But you can make up like, oh, this is how a conversation with my mother would have gone because I know her, I know me. I'm not misrepresenting her, but I'm also not racking my brains trying to remember what exactly was said.
Hopefully in the fiction, there's enough emotional truth to be resonant for the writer and the reader.
Yeah. But I will say one of the things I talked to people about this week that, depending on the storytelling, exaggeration is an incredibly powerful storytelling device, People like it when things get big and over the top,
It's funny.
Yeah.
I never really thought of that, though I did think a lot about Salinger, who wrote all the time about these super geniuses and how that kind of IQ exaggeration, I guess, made them very interesting for readers.
Still, right? People are obsessed with those kids, those glass kids.
The glass kids.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. So give me an example of what you're talking about, how exaggeration. So you led this workshop today.
I'll give you an example.
Okay.
There's this guy named Josh, great guy. He's taken a workshop from me at Omega maybe 1 or 2 previous years. Really sweet guy. And he wanted to tell a story about this experience in a restaurant where he sat down with his wife and this older guy came by and poured the water and shook his hand shook a little bit, and Josh looked and was like, oh, he turned to his wife. He was like, isn't that great? They've given like an employment opportunity to like an older person who's got some challenges.
Right.
And then they have a meal, he leaves. They come back, go to the deli, whatever. He finds out before they leave town, the guy owns the joint. And I'm like, oh, that's a cute story. I suggest to him, in your telling of the story, if you can really judge the shit out of this guy, and make it worse than it was, he's feeble, he spilled water on you, he tripped over the rug as he's walking away, it needs to be worse.
That shit might be okay at Staples, but not at this restaurant.
And I said, if you can heighten your response to him and be a little more of an a-hole, by the time it turns, it's going to be a better story. Right? If you are like, wow, I was really off base, and if the heightened nature makes for better drama, and the surprise and the turn of the story is bigger.
Right, and the foot and the mouth is bigger.
Exactly.
And I think readers and listeners really relate to the foot and the mouth.
Yes.
Like, oh God, yeah, Ben.
Yeah.
And it gets a lot of laughter.
Yeah.
Because it's nervous laughter. Like, oh shit, I did that.
And often the storyteller, I mean, this, is representing the people, right? We want you to tell us what happened, what you did, how you managed it, and I get to feel what you went through because I've been through that before, but you're leading me through your experience, right?
Yeah, and live audiences are the best because they're different every time.
Yeah.
And for certain things, they bounce this energy back at you, as you're saying. So you back to the Mojave Desert.
Yes.
How old were you when you left?
Oh, wow. Okay. I had the town where I grew up, Lancaster, is a very I because of who I am. I have I see it in mythic terms. It was aerospace community by the time we lived there, but its history, it was a farming community. It was named after these animals that an early land, what's it called?
Baron?
Like promoter. He was trying to sell real estate. He imported antelopes from Africa to this desert in California. and called it Antelope Valley because it had been like alfalfa farms and he was trying to get some like glamour exoticism going on.
Valley.
Yeah. And of course they all died because they wouldn't cross the railroad tracks and they couldn't find the water. Anyway, so it also was the place. Frank Zappa went to high school there. John Wayne spent his part of his growing up there. Judy Garland lived there before she started doing the movies. So it has a kind of mystique to it, right? A weird mystique, not glamour. And so I lived there, and we moved there when I was 7. Mm-hmm. My father worked for Lockheed. And in later years, I realized there was a kind of condition that isn't unique to Lancaster. It was one of those towns where people couldn't leave.
Oh,
one of these kinds of towns that you could try to get away, and then you'd be sucked back in. And I suffered that for all the way through until I was 30 years old.
Wow.
I left many times, and then I would end up back there in my parents' home.
That's a shock. I had $10 on you leaving at 15 and a half.
I left right after high school, and I went to Europe for a year of school, and then I moved back home. And then I went to Canada for a year of school, and I moved back home. And then I moved to Los Angeles, and I lost my apartment, and I moved back home.
What kinds of things were you doing in Lancaster between 18 and 30?
I'd get a job at the local bookstore and try to save money and get my life together again so I could strike out and make my way. And then I had very few tools for living. I had an excess of charisma and a lack of tools.
That's so funny. When did you realize that you had an excess of charisma? Because understanding that must be very valuable.
Oh, I mean, maybe now, maybe sitting here with you. I don't think I've ever said that before.
As I pay rapt attention and make Google eyes at you. Wow. Huh.
Meaning, like many kids in certain kinds of families, I knew how to perform, right? I knew how to like bring the smiles
shoot
and
the
that.
Shit and
totally, I made people
stuff.
happy and all that stuff. But I couldn't. I never had a bank account. Didn't know how to make. I had no tools. I was almost at idiot savant level.
No tools. I should have put that in the Facebook promo.
Tonight's guest, idiot savant, Chris Wells.
Yeah, it's good in a business card. You should add that to the incredibly long litany of accomplishments from your life. So no tools, but you had dreams. I'm guessing. What did the dreams
theater
look like?
Lodged in me.
That was
and
that
this
nice.
is one of the reasons I am such an advocate for the arts for anybody, but especially for kids and young people. And theater was my North Star. All I knew how to do was get in another play. It made my life have sense. So I was like, okay, just get in the next play, get in the next play, get in the next play.
Right.
That's all I knew how to do.
So when you finally pulled yourself away from the magnetic pole of Lancaster in the desert, where did you go to?
Los Angeles.
And when did you get in your first play after that?
Well, these departures, I would go back to Los Angeles. So I was accruing a kind of community and a kind of, I worked in LA and then, so I was working the whole time, I was doing shows.
And if a potential job came up, somebody would call you. And
Yeah.
But that one trip when you were 30, you didn't come back. What successes or, thoughts, what changes in you?
I stopped drinking.
Oh, wow. And you were drinking a lot in Lancaster?
I was drinking a lot all the way from the time I went to Europe when I was 17.
Uli.
No, the later trip after high school. I went there. I went to a school in Switzerland for a year after high school.
Okay.
And I learned to drink there.
And what did you drink there? What did people
wine?
drink?
I started drinking really cheap rot gut Yugoslavian wine for 2 Swiss francs a bottle.
Right.
Yeah. Awful.
And then how did you quit drinking?
Oh my God. I was living in Echo Park. I lived in a little Forest Service shack on the side of a hill in Echo Park. And I woke up one morning. I was doing a play at the theater company I belonged to in Los Angeles called the Actors Gang, which is a really wonderful company. We were making very exciting devised work, and I was doing production of The Imaginary Invalid by Moliere. And I had gone to some stupid party, some random Hollywood party the night before. And I woke up the next morning, and I had an awakening. I had a revelation. I realized I would never, ever find anything new in being drunk or hungover. I had sort of exhausted it. I thought, oh,
wow,
there is no more information to be gotten from this behavior.
That's
and I just
very interesting.
Yeah, I had I felt like a little door open in this shack, and I remember feeling like I could walk through it, and then I did.
The shack you lived in, or metaphorical shack?
In the shack where I lived.
An old Forest Service shack, is that what you said?
Yeah, it was
Sounds
crazy.
Kind of romantic and
it
kind
was
of
crazy.
Chilly.
It was chilly. Yes, there was no heat. There was no insulation.
Yeah.
It was built in the 1920s on the side of a hill, and Echo Park was still far more rangy than it is now. It's become incredibly gentrified. But there were choppers every night, and you could hear, gang violence happening, gunfire. But I lived in this little shack where my life changed profoundly.
Wow. Waking up that next morning.
Yep.
It reminds me of a story. I knew a guy like decades ago who struggled with his heroin addiction. And I would see him on and off, and he'd be like, I'm trying to get clean. And then one day he was clean. I said, well, what happened? He says, I got bored.
Yeah.
He said, I just got bored of that. Every day, waking up, looking for a fix.
Yep.
Similar sort of
Very
thing. Nothing
similar.
new happened.
Yep. I was truly, I don't consider myself a religious person. But something mystical happened. I believe that.
Awesome. And how would you describe that?
A thing that I had behavior and substances that I couldn't really control and were lifted from me.
Wonderful. And
I've never had a drink since that morning.
And did you avail yourself of any of the programs? There's lots of programs out there.
Yeah, eventually. Yeah.
Eventually. So you were on your own for a spell, and then you thought, Jesus, this is tough. I'm just putting words in your mouth. Why eventually did you, if you already had some success?
Well, here's the thing, anybody who gives up substances will tell you, once you kick the substance, you realize what the issues are, and then you got to deal with them.
Okay.
It's the cliche of any group you go into. They're like, it's not about the booze.
Right.
It's not about the food. It's not about the gambling. It's not about the sex addiction.
And what were the big issues? Don't forget, you can just pass on any question.
You may have noticed I'm not a big passer. I'm
That's good.
I'm such a soft touch in an interview. What were the big issues? I think, I did, like I said a few minutes ago, I didn't know how to live, really. And that sort of over-feeling person that I was, I think I needed mood altering a lot. I needed a way to modify my excessive moods. And I also think I intuitively developed a way of kind of dampening what I didn't really want to know was true.
Okay, which is what?
Well, the life I was living was not a good one.
Right.
I wasn't happy. I was trapped in this back and forth, and I didn't have any way. I was like, I knew that my life, there was some deep dysfunction, and I had no way of fixing it. And I do remember I was doing this play, as I mentioned, and I remember I had the idea, I thought, okay, I think right after I stopped drinking, I was like, oh, maybe if I change this one thing, if I just change this one thing, my life will change. And it did. And I never moved back to Lancaster.
And amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So how long ago was that?
I was 30.
Okay, I wasn't going to ask. How old are you now?
57. I'll be
57.
58 this August.
Youngsters.
Yeah, I know. I'm a babe.
All you kids coming in here, whippersnappers. So you gave it up.
Yeah.
Your life started to change. What were the first wonderful things that started coming into your life? Or meaningful, or aha moments.
Well, I started to be more reliable. I was always a reliable in certain ways. This is what was remarkable. Somehow the theater gave me a way to show up, and I always showed up. I didn't miss shows. I was on time. I was great at it. And so,
did you ever show up drunk?
No. I never showed up drunk. But the rest of my life was just a disaster. So I started to be able to have a life, I started to not lose jobs. I started to not, get evicted. I started to be able to have some stability. I didn't have a lot of safety. I didn't know how to have safety and stability in my life. So that started happening.
It's a tough thing to have to teach yourself.
Yeah, I still have to. I'm still learning that.
And still learning. And you live in Woodstock now.
I do.
In
I
these
live
Birdcliff houses.
Yep. My husband Bobby and I live in a Birdcliff cottage.
Which you get kicked out of at
We're
their
getting
well.
kicked out
I'm
in
just
November.
connecting the dots to the stability thing.
Ding, 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 Norm. It's a big deal.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
So if anybody's listening and has a place here in Rhinecliff for Chris Wells and his husband, Bobby Lucy, who I spent so many years as a painter in my life. Bobby's an amazing, amazing painter. I'm just so in awe of his work. So if anybody has a place, reach out.
Yeah.
Because come November.
Well, here's the thing. Apropos of our conversation, we are going to California for the winter.
Nice.
We're going to Lancaster. We are going to move my mother out of that house where she's been for 53 years, move her into a retirement community, and put her house on the market for her.
Wow.
And then we will move back here, I don't know, in the spring and hope that things have died down a little bit.
Right.
So that it's a little bit loaded is, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
Right. Well, it's going to be a little bit loaded. Does she have a lot of stuff in her house?
Oh, my God. Yeah, there's some stuff. I was there the weekend before the shutdown. I was there trying to get rid of stuff. I mean,
March 2020.
Mm-hmm. The weekend before, March 9th, I flew home. But I had, 5 days of arguments about thermoses and keychains. I mean...
And what was the question you asked her? Like, is this enriching your life? The classic.
Oh no! There were no questions.
You're just like gone.
She just caught me trying to throw shit away. Well, there was a garage sale, which I have. You'll be glad to know I've sworn off garage sales for the rest of my goddamn life. There will be no more garage sales.
Sworn off having them or going to them or both?
Oh, well, I'll always go to them, It's in my people's blood. But I will never have one.
So your mom kind of, she's amassed a lot of stuff. We don't need to call her a pack rat. But she's amassed
she's
a
not
lot.
really pack ratty. It's attachment. She's attached to things. She's not, it's not cluttery. It's just there and stuck.
And did you inherit that?
Well, I do like stuff.
Yeah. Your husband's in the stuff making business.
Well, we like stuff together, yeah. We like a tchotchke, we like a thing, an object, yeah.
Is there anything in particular that you collect?
Oh my God, you'll enjoy this.
Oh, good.
So after Bobby and I met, shortly after we met, we started taking these road trips cross country because he had some money saved and I had unemployment from some theater gigs, and we were newly in love. Let's take to the road.
Sweet.
So we drove cross country several times, and we would stop at any antique mall or junk shop within like a 50-mile radius of anywhere we were. So I had an apartment in New York City, in kind of Murray Hill. And it was a cute walk up.
Kind of Murray, like 31st and 3rd.
29th and Park.
Okay.
So you know what I mean? It's not quite Murray Hill, but it was historically called Rose Hill. Oh. Did you know that?
I think I did.
Because the Murrays owned that farm and the Roses owned that farm. Yeah. And they were on hills.
I lived in Kips Bay.
Yeah.
Near Turtle Bay.
There you go.
Near Rose Hill.
Yeah.
Near Murray Hill.
Yeah. And so this was when you used to get in the taxi at the airport, there was that little nondescript gray rectangle on the map.
Yeah.
That was Rose Hill. So I lived there. I had this apartment. It was on the parlor floor. By the time we started coming back from these road trips, we had amassed two primary things. We had found these, I had started collecting these, they're birds. They're cheap Mexican tourist art. You've probably seen them before. They're usually on black, and there's an individual bird. And the
paintings of birds.
The birds are made of feathers.
Oh.
And then there might be a little bit of paint, like a tree branch or a leaf, but the bodies are made of birds. And they were ticky-tack souvenir art.
Yeah.
And so I had gotten two of them at a junk shop in New York City, and then when we started traveling, I started seeing them everywhere. I was like, nobody's collecting these. There were just hundreds of them all across the country, and they were probably from the 40s and 50s. And they have these very distinctive carved, like roughly carved wooden frames. And if the legend is true, that's often found on the sort of yellowed sticker on the back, the art form is descended from the Aztecs.
Okay.
Because of the feathers and the bird gods.
That's a good story. The exaggeration makes sense even better. Yeah.
And then the other thing we collected, in the entryway of the apartment, there was a little tiny foyer.
Right.
And Bobby moved in and, not surprisingly, painted everything, painted all the walls. And in the entryway, he painted these individual stripes. They were turquoise, the width of standard masking tape. White, turquoise, white, turquoise, white, turquoise. And we installed what we, by then, had amassed and called our faggotry.
Faggotry.
And it was all this plastic sort of, what would you call it? Like kitsch. Like, silhouettes, ladies with pompadour hairstyles, and like gentlemen in coats, and but all gold plastic and ivory, and so that's what we collected.
So you say we, but earlier you said you, and I wondered like what Bobby thought about all that. But he was a partner in this crime of collecting the.
Oh hell yeah! I did not do this alone. But the bird thing had started.
He wasn't just an enabler.
No. The bird thing had started because I had these two bird pictures before I met him. And then when we hit the road, we started collecting them. And the foyer we called the Hall of Faggotry.
I love that. Do you have a Hall of Faggotry now?
No, but it will probably live again.
That's good. Well,
somewhere we'll have you over.
Yeah, that'd be great. And were there other items in the Hall of Faggotry?
Oh, well, it was so densely hung with like little gold gilt shelves with like a turquoise figurine of a milk maiden and busts, and it was just all this fake romantic tchotchkes.
Was it like floor to ceiling?
Yeah.
Because these parlor apartments are like 10 feet.
It was floor to ceiling.
Yeah.
It was extraordinary.
Do you have pictures of it?
Well, yeah, somewhere there are photos.
Right.
We had an idea, I'll tell you, since we're here chatting. There was a closet in this foyer. There were two shutter doors.
The closet in the Hall of Faggotry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hello, something's got to come out of there.
Yeah.
So we had
saying.
That was the closet for the whole apartment, but it was big. It was deep. Kind of had this secret thing in the back. Anyway, but there were these
secret thing. Look, have you written about that? That sounds metaphorically rich.
That was surprisingly deep. So we built these rods, and then behind the rods with all the clothes, there were secret shelves. But that's not what I'm going to tell you about right now. There were these two closet doors. They were shutters.
Yeah.
And we had this fantasy that we never realized. But We were going to do invited performances where we'd have like 2 people at a time who, we might advertise it secretly. They would come to our door and they'd ring the doorbell, and I would be standing there dressed in costume, and I would welcome them and give them a tour of the Hall of Faggotry, like make up fake history for all the objects.
What year is this?
2005.
Nice.
And then Bobby would be hiding in the closet, and he would appear in like a little velvet suit with knickers, and a wig, and like have a little mint on a tray. And then he'd disappear. He would not say anything.
A little Penn and Teller.
And it would be just 2 people could come in, close the door, and they would have a whole experience, and we'd introduce the history and lore.
How long did the experience last?
In my imagination,
no, with the actual 2 people, yeah,
it
performance.
Would, it'd be like 40 minutes.
So you presumably, you and Bobby wrote it all together?
Well, we never did it.
Oh, you didn't?
It lives as
misunderstood.
It was never realized. It was.
Did you ever know this thing called You, the City? You did it in London and then New York, and it was a play where you'd sort of show up at a spot, and then they'd break you into groups, and somebody would guide you around the city. And they'd guide you into an alleyway where like somebody would get mugged and their shit would happen, or up into an apartment where there'd be a domestic drama. And you had, the idea is you didn't know whether it was just something happening. It was in the East End of London, in sort of the rough East End, or it was the theater. It was really nice.
I love theater like that.
Yeah.
Love that.
So do you have a dream role to play in the theater?
Oh, my God. A dream role to play in the theater?
Yeah.
I don't really perform straight theater anymore. Or I haven't in a long time. I may again someday. Honestly, I think I should play Mama Rose in Gypsy. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So what's the chance of that ever happening? You're a young man.
I don't think it's going to happen. Years ago in Los Angeles, I was part of a theater company called Fabulous Monsters, and it was just a bunch of fags. It was so good. And it was like the late 90s. And we would put on these cabarets, and one of the numbers I did was this character I created called Ethyl Alcohol. No, I was still drinking. And I did the most maniacal version of Rose's Turn, like truly like kabuki terror Rose's Turn, ultimately screaming at the audience, It was really, and I was like, oh yeah, that would be really fun to do.
Yeah. So you've had all these adventures in the theater, and fantasies of further adventures you'd like to have. Did they work their way into the creation of the Secret City, which is just this beautiful thing you do?
Well, thank you.
And can you tell people what the Secret City is?
Essentially, the Secret City is a church of art that I founded in New York. Okay. Bobby and I founded in New York in 2007. And the way it came about was I stayed in Los Angeles making our theater. I loved my community. I had an amazing time there. And it became clear to me, because of the way I described my life, I had never really struck out on my own into the world. I never went to college. I never really left. And I had kind of slid into LA. So I felt like I had a big adventure ahead of me. So when I was 38, I moved to New York. And I always wanted to do New York theater. And however, shortly after I got there, I realized I didn't want to do that anymore. It didn't interest me. The sort of commercial theater in New York City.
Straight theater.
Yeah. It was, in some ways, I felt like I had had the extraordinary art experience. So when I moved to New York, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I gotta have 5 jobs to get a job in the theater where I'm gonna make $102 a week. No. So I met Bobby, and I had this idea several years before. Wouldn't it be cool? Why are artists so divided? Why is this community so divided, almost like artists suffer a diaspora like other communities. There's competition as opposed to collaboration. And when I got to New York, I thought, oh my God, right, artists are just being pushed out of this city in droves. So the vision was to create a space where artists could come and connect, where they weren't asked to buy anything or sell anything.
Right.
And I was fascinated with, I thought, what is the pull of religion? Why is religion a draw? And why is church a draw? And I thought, well, what would church look like if artists made church? So that's what the Secret City is.
Huh. And how's it been going for all these years?
Oh my God. Well,
Started
it's been
the city-
15 years now.
Amazing.
15 years. It's, there've been highs, there've been lows. It's it's always changing, always. And that's a beautiful thing, to make a work of art that is durational like that and keeps going through different permutations. And then, when the pandemic hit, I had just come back from that weekend at my mother's, and I had a gig in New York City. I had created a new performance piece, and I flew home, and I was supposed to go back to the city on Tuesday, and Bobby said, no, this isn't happening. You're canceling. You're staying here. This thing has happened. This thing is about to hit, and it's going to be big, and it's going to be bad.
Right.
So you're going to stay here. And then I think the next day he said, since you're going to stay here, maybe you should start doing something online.
And stop bugging me in my studio.
So on the 12th of March, I started doing those daily shows on Facebook.
Okay, I'm just going to interject here.
Yeah.
Because somehow, I don't know when I tuned in, March or April.
Yeah.
I'm getting goosebumps. Those things were so perfect. They were so good. They were on at noon, and I tuned in, I think, on Instagram.
Yeah.
And you would have you did 5 days a week.
Yeah.
You have a word a day. Then you would welcome everybody.
Yeah.
Thrilled.
Yeah,
I think I
like
told
romper room.
You'd be like, hi, Norm. I would always wave at the computer. And people would type in their messages.
Yep.
And then you would read a poem. I might get the order wrong.
Yeah.
Then you'd read something that you wrote. And there'd be some meditation at the end.
That's right.
And every single day you did this. It was a huge production.
Yeah.
And I think if you ever tried to do that, you understand what a huge production was. And they were all so good.
Thank you.
Are those archived somewhere where people can hear them?
Well, we posted them on Facebook and Instagram. And this Kathy James, this extraordinary woman who now works for us, is archiving everything from the organization from the past.
Oh boy.
And she's transferring all of those Facebook shows into our archive, slowly but surely. They take a little while to download.
And so if anybody wanted to hear one or two or a year and a half's worth of them, how many did you do eventually?
Oh my God, 300 and something.
Yeah.
Because we did them for I guess we did them for a year and a half. So I think we did 340. Because we didn't do them on the weekends, and we took a few breaks, like a week off here and a week off there.
Right. I remember those were sad weeks.
Yeah.
But it was such a beautiful moment of community at this time when community was sort of scattering.
Yeah.
Which is actually Matt Rosenberg here did a similar thing, serving cocktails out of his back window. I didn't see this during the pandemic. And then when sort of the lockdown ended, he still wanted to create community, and that's why we're here now, Radio Free Rencliff.
Love it.
Yeah, me too. Round of applause for Matt. Yeah.
Well, and the way I know Matt and Carrie is through the Secret City.
Nice.
Because they live across the street from Dawn, and I knew Dawn, and I met you at a party. The first time I met you was at a little party at Dawn's house. It was the first night I met Matt and Carrie as well. And then Matt and Carrie started coming to the Secret City in New York City. And that's how I come to be here today.
Dawn's the best. She was on this show.
Oh, was she?
Yeah, I don't know, 5 or 6, 7 months ago.
Yeah. Dawn's great.
She was an early guest.
Yeah.
She's amazing and so many good stories.
Yeah.
So
another person from the theater.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, hats off for that.
Thank you.
They were so good, and it was such a nice thing to tune into. And Now you're doing, I'm just going to plug this thing again.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, 4 p.m. at the Morton Memorial Library and Community House. You're reading 3 stories.
I'm going to tell or perform 3 stories. Yep. And there'll be live music. Tim Gainey and Jake Garolnik.
Yeah.
And the stories will be recorded. And Matt approached me about making a podcast of my stories. Because he and Carrie are very familiar with my work over the years. When I was at our height, when we were doing these big sort of spectacle performances in New York City with the choir and the band and costumes and
Right.
a different a different lineup of performers and artists every month, I would write a new piece every month, and it would be inspired by the theme of the month. And so the pieces I've written, these big sort of set pieces that I'll perform 3 of tomorrow, were all written inspired by a theme of one of those events.
What's the theme?
It would change every month.
Oh, what's the theme for? Is there a theme for tomorrow's performance?
Well, these are all stories about the summer. One
right,
of the
you said.
stories was inspired by the idea of light. Mm-hmm. And I went to Nantucket to write about light. One of the stories is inspired by, I can't remember what that story was inspired by. I can't always remember the themes, but they were really just prompts for me. The themes,
And do you generally work with a prompt?
No, I don't generally work with a prompt, but I do believe that the quicker you commit to an idea and move into it, the better.
And is that something you teach your students?
Yeah.
And you did the thing today at Omega.
Yeah, I was there all week, and then we did a little presentation today, yeah.
And when's the next time you're doing any Omega stuff?
I'll be back there in October. Thank you for asking. I'm leading a week of writing at, I wish I remembered the week, maybe October 6th or something like that.
People can go to the Omega website.
Yeah, go to the Omega website, and it's a week of writing, and I work with writers at all levels of all genre. Doesn't matter. People can come. The one requirement is you bring an idea, because I do not want people spending their writing time with indecision.
I see. Because today has had other requirements, I believe. I saw on the website.
Oh, my God.
An object that is personally revealing. And the next requirement is one fancy garment.
Yes.
And I might have chuckled out loud when I read that. Because when I think of you in the Secret City, it's all feather boas. I mean, there's a parade every year. Is that going to happen this year in Woodstock?
Well, we're doing the Secret City. We've done what we call an art revival every summer with the townwide processional, but COVID has really kind of thrown things, so we're not doing the processional this summer. We're going to do a big dance party July 31st at the Colony. It's really fun.
Nice.
We did it last summer. It's a blast. And then we're kind of putting all of our ducks into Halloween, which we are now in charge of the Halloween festival, the celebration in the town of Woodstock.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it's amazing. We did it last year for the first time, and it was incredible.
I'm sorry I missed that.
Yeah, well,
make
you'll have
sure
to come
go there this year.
Yeah.
So the other requirements
Jesus.
that you don't have.
Yes.
A version of someone else's story you love.
Yeah.
I love that. But what's the idea of getting
people share, a passage from a book they love, or it's so that people think about other people's writing as well as their own.
Okay. All right. And last but not least, a photo of an artistic hero.
Yeah. Yes.
Who did people bring this week?
Oh, there's always, who always appears?
Oh, good.
A Frida Kahlo always appears.
Interesting.
Which is legit. A Frida Kahlo appearance is legit. Who else? Oh, well, sometimes, and it's very touching, sometimes people bring people from their family.
Right.
Or people you've never heard of before. Or Maya Angelou. Or, Borges. Or
I would bring a picture of you.
That's sweet. I mean, like an early headshot.
No, the picture that Matt's taking right now to put up on the website.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, so who are your creative idols?
Oh my God. Who are my creative idols?
Yeah, or who are your artistic heroes, however you want to put it.
Wow.
Or your influences throughout the life.
Yeah.
Early influences, recent influences.
I have to say, an early and enduring influence is Bette Midler.
I'm not super familiar with her body of work.
I would say Bette Midler possesses the ridiculous and the sublime, the preposterous and the sacred in equal measures, and I admire that. I aspire to that. Somebody who is working at a level of, not so much now, but historically, like a big, loud, broad, slightly vulgar body level, also reaching the ecstatic.
And do you think maybe that big, broad body level helps the ecstatic?
Oh my God, absolutely.
Slip into people's souls?
Absolutely. I know you reached out to me beforehand and asked about like the body stuff,
Yeah.
the body issues.
Yeah.
So one of the things that started happening with Secret City is the more sort of ecstatic those events became and the more sort of spectacle, then there started to be these crazy outfits that I had designers making for me. And, you know, the reason you think of boas is there were platforms and really bright colors and fake fur and sequins and sparkles.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I started taking my clothes off.
Yeah.
For the entrance, I would often disrobe, and I'm a man of size.
You're a portly gent.
A portly gent.
Yeah.
I got to write at least one book that's titled A Portly Gent.
Autobiography.
Adventures
Wells,
of
yeah.
a Portly Gent.
Yeah.
And I had this, who was it? Paul Zaloom. Do you know Paul Zaloom, the
I know
puppeteer?
of him. Yeah.
Great guy. He's a friend of mine in Los Angeles, and we've presented his work a few times. And he used to come to these Secret City events in Los Angeles because we started doing them out there 4 times a year. And one time Paul Zaloom came up to me, and he's so thoughtful. He's like, taking your clothes off is really significant, isn't it? And I said, I think it is. Why do you think it is? He said, it's immediately disarming. It just immediately shows people that you are going to fearlessly lead them and that it's going to be a revealing experience
You
for
take
everyone.
all your clothes off.
No, I don't there's not nudity.
Oh, okay.
But, you know, one month I was wearing like pink jockeys from American Apparel and a big sun hat.
So you mentioned we talked about this ahead of time, and I hardly ever ask people, oh, can we talk about this topic?
Yeah.
But I was online looking at some of your early videos.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, look at his belly. You know, look at his beautiful. And when I wrote to you, I'm like, you know, can we talk about your big, beautiful belly? And, you know, I've got one myself, maybe not as good as yours, but the day's young.
I like the way you frame that.
And I was impressed at how freely you inhabited your body in that level of undress. And I wondered, because I know so many people who were like, oh, if I could only lose 10 pounds, I'd be so happy.
Yeah.
And people who are sometimes not happy, or often not happy, because they don't have the body that they think they should have.
Yeah.
And you seem very happy in your body.
I like that you see that, or you think that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. It's not simple. It's not simple. I mean, I wish I had a different body often.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to not have this body. Like I'm not always very good at it, but I'd like to be a good caretaker of this body. And also I really don't want to not have my full life just because I have a certain kind of body. And that's also part of it.
Right.
But all of those things are in process. I mean, a lot of that stuff in Secret City, those events healed a lot of me. And, you know, it was incredibly...
Right.
But it felt easy. I didn't feel like I was like, okay, I'm going to go take my clothes off. I was just sort of inspired. And then I realized over time, I thought, oh, that's why when Paul Zaloom said that to me, I thought, well, it is a big deal. I know it's a big deal for me. It's interesting to hear it's a big deal for you. But then I thought, it's a big deal for me in a different way.
Right. It's not a super big deal for me, but, you know, it'd be easier if, you know, you had the 6-pack abs and the big guns and all that stuff. But also, you know, it's nice, as you said, it's nice to be vulnerable, to be out there. And when you're a larger person
Yeah.
of any gender, and you're out on stage and you're showing off all of that,
Yeah.
it comes across as body positivity.
Yeah.
It
Well,
comes across a nice way. Whereas if you got the 6-pack abs and you do that, it's like, whatever, show off.
Well, yeah. I can't help but think of this week with storytelling, and the whole vulnerability is a superpower, right? Like showing people
It is.
your vulnerabilities, and if you can, it's beautiful when you just sort of show them in a I'm vulnerable, but when you proclaim your vulnerabilities, it can be incredibly empowering and powering for other people.
Yeah. And you said your writing is often autobiographical.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of vulnerabilities in your performance tomorrow at 4 p.m. at the Memorial Library and Community House.
Yes, thank you. And a lot of the story, I'll just do 3 stories tomorrow, but many, many, many of my stories are about my experience in my body and living, my relationship with my body, physical experiences.
Well, can't wait to hear it.
Thank you.
I got tickets.
Thank you.
We have a few minutes left. I want to ask about the Art Life, which is your show doing this and playing music on Radio Kingston.
That's right.
And it's on 10 p.m. on Monday nights.
Yes.
And you interview various people on there. You interviewed me on there once upon a time.
I did. We had a great time.
Well, it was, at that point, I don't know, I had a bunch of interviews, different people, and yours was the very best. It was really, the questions were so good and insightful, and the follow-up questions were so spot on.
As is this. I'm really grateful to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing that?
Well, 3 years, three, maybe 3.5. Yeah. And I've changed the format a bit. I used to do really long form, but it became very labor intensive to book people and then to have these sort of in-depth conversations. So I have maybe an interview a month, and then I'm playing a lot of music and curating music. And
I see. So 1 week a month you're interviewing and music, and the other 3 or so
you're tuning in, and
music.
I'm like, welcome to the Art Life with Chris Wells. And then I'm putting together playlists. Yeah.
That's nice. I can put that, if that's your voice, I can put that on to fall asleep to. 10 p.m. is just past my bedtime, I'm afraid.
Quite all right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, one last question, I think, that I'd written down. Where does your kick-ass work ethic come from? You're so, that thing, the Secret City Daily, like so much work went into that.
Yeah.
And all of the things you do seem like they're super labor intensive. And I believe writing is labor intensive.
Yeah.
So to what do you attribute your nose to the grindstone?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think, going back to those early years of doing theater and realizing that this was my path forward, I had a sense that if I just did this, it would move me forward. I didn't know what was up ahead, but I knew that the practice was like conducting me somewhere, and that has totally just remained in my body. That the things I'm making are moving me forward. They are both, saving my life, but they're also transforming me and moving me to the next thing.
Right.
So that's a little conceptual. The other thing is I'm a highly compulsive individual.
Oh.
And it's good for me to have these compulsions than other less healthy compulsions.
Right.
What else? I'm voraciously curious, and there's so many things I want to make. I've made a crazy array of amazing things.
Yeah.
Like from parades to plays to off-Broadway to bands to, I just have a great curiosity.
Off-Broadway, where you got a special off-Broadway called Obie Award, special citation for the Secret City.
For making the Secret City, yeah.
Super cool.
It's so funny that I would stop acting and then I'd win an Obie Award.
Well, so, where do you want this to go? You're doing the performance tomorrow. And is there a dream for what that kind of performance might be? Or
what, with the podcast?
Yeah.
I'm thrilled because I've written these stories for so long, and they're sort of a secret treasure trove. They lie in hiding.
How many do you reckon you have?
I want you to guess.
I'm going to guess 2,100.
Oh my God, no. Oh well, if I count the daily ones,
I would count those.
No, but the ones I wrote for Secret City events, I have, I think, 138.
Right, amazing. And how's it going with the book, The Fatty Gay?
Yeah, so here's the thing.
Which is a great name.
Yeah. So that's the other thing I did during the pandemic. I mean, I will say it was nuts. The level of productivity in our house during the pandemic was nuts. And then I had a bit of a meltdown, because I was really burned out. But it was amazing. That's how I responded to the pandemic. Other people made bread. Other people got depressed. Other people got divorced. I got super busy and creative.
You got productive.
So in addition to the daily shows, I then had this idea and I wrote a novel. So I wrote my first novel. So I'm going to try to sell that in September.
Oh, sweet. You're done with it?
Yeah.
Again, congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
And we're done with this. It's been a wonderful hour.
Incredible.
So amazing.
Thank you, Norm Magnusson.
Thank you, Chris Wells. And thank you, Bobby Lucy, for being here.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you for the Epicurean and Patricia Wand and Matt and Jen and everybody for making this possible. I love doing it. Everybody have a great Friday.